Vote 2024 now, with Election Day drawing nearer. We have asked the two candidates running for mayor in Plattsburgh to join us at Mountain Lake PBS for a debate. And both Wendell Hughes and Don Kasperzak have agreed. That will be coming up in just a couple of weeks in early October. And we're reaching out to our viewers from Plattsburgh, asking you to participate as well by sending in your questions for the two candidates. You can email them to us here at Mountain Lake PBS. You can see the address there on your screen. You can even record a question to send along to us. The hour-long mayoral debate is scheduled to be broadcast on Friday, October 11th at 8 p.m. right here on Mountain Lake PBS. In August, New York's highest court, the Court of Appeals, ruled that a new law allowing New York voters to cast their ballots this November by mail is constitutional. The court's 6-1 ruling essentially allows anyone wishing to vote in the upcoming November election by using a mail-in ballot can do so as long as they request their ballot either before or during New York's early voting period, which this year will run from Saturday, October 26th through Sunday, November 3rd. And here to talk more about the court ruling and early ballots is Blair Horner with NYPIRG here in New York. Welcome. It's nice to see you.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's long been believed that under the Constitution in New York, voters who wanted to vote by absentee ballot could only do so if they were ill or if they were traveling or if they were serving in the military and unable to get to their designated polling place on Election Day. Does this legislation, this new law, however, challenge that?
Yes and no. The no part is you can't vote on Election Day by mail-in ballot, but you can vote in mail-in during the early voting period, which runs right up until Election Day. So that's the yes part. The no part is technically you can't do it for Election Day itself. The state constitution was written early in the 20th century, and it basically says that you have to show up physically at the polls. That changed for the first time in New York during COVID, where it wasn't safe for people to go cast their ballot, and it wasn't safe for the poll workers to have people come in and see them. Once the sort of COVID emergency ended, so did that allowance. And so lawmakers passed a law this past year that allows for the early voting option for mail-in ballot. And the argument was in the court, which the court upheld, was basically that this Constitution was written before there was an early voting option. And since the legislature is empowered to set up the sort of the mechanism for how people can vote, that allowing people to do it during the early voting period was allowed to happen. And so in a sense, you can get a mail-in ballot now, and it makes it easier for people to vote, which is a good thing.
So you will request a ballot. You can call the state, you can call your county board of elections, you can get an early ballot sent to you. Then you have to get your early ballot back in, but you don't necessarily have to have it in before Election Day, right? They allow you right up until Election Day to turn in your early ballot.
Yeah, it has to be postmarked if you're mailing it in, or you're right, dropping it off. You can do it up until Election Day. And so, all of what you just described is right. And people can request the mail-in ballots on the State Board of Elections website, I think 46 days before the deadline of when you can submit it. And so people could basically be doing it right now. And so the early voting period helps, and allowing for mail-in balloting helps. Some of the states that have the highest voter participation rates are the states that have allowed mail-in voting for all sorts of races. States like Oregon, for example, which have been doing it for many years.
And of course, the concerns many people have when they hear about mail-in balloting is the potential for fraud. What's been the deal in Oregon? Have they had to deal with fraud?
Well, you always have to make sure that the integrity elections are, airtight, or as airtight as humans can make it. But they haven't had the problems in Oregon that lead to fraud. And so, again, the New York does have experience with this. It's not the first time we've ever done it. We've had it for many years with regard to absentee ballots, as you mentioned earlier, but that's really for relatively few people. And the state did have experience dealing with it during COVID. And so it's a popular thing. We think the public would like it. And we think anything you can make it easier for people to vote is a good thing. And New York State, you have a constitutional right to vote. So it's not like, just a privilege. You have a right to do it. And so the state should do everything possible to make sure you can, implement that right.
And is the hope that this is something that down the road, New York will embrace this, New York will do more of this, and eventually there will be more options like this for voters to participate?
I mean, as an advocate, we're always looking at best practice in the country. And you look at states like Minnesota and Oregon, for example, are states that have high voter participation rates, and what lessons can be learned.
And so we talked a little bit about being able to get that early mail-in ballot now. You can do it through the state on the state's website. You can do it through your county board of elections. And then once you get your ballot, you have the option. You can mail it in. It's a prepaid envelope that it comes with. That comes along with the ballot. You can mail it in, or if you so choose, you can drop it off at one of the early voting polling places in your community. Up here in the North Country, usually the counties just have one of those locations, so you could drop it off there. You can drop it off at the Board of Elections, or you can drop it off at a polling place on Election Day if you'd rather do it that way.
That's right. And all of those things give people more options. Busy New Yorkers need as many options as possible to make sure they vote, and we hope they do. However they choose to do it, even if they want to go in the old-fashioned way and fill in some bubbles.
And some people still do that. Blair Horner, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.